This podcast is part of E2C Network, where we share the whole Auburn experience.
War Eagle Auburn fans, welcome to No Huddle, your source for Auburn football news and discussion, part of the E2C Network. I'm AJ Richardson, and I'm also here with Jared Davis. We just had some Auburn football. It was 8A style. It was soggy. It was wet. The game ended up 24-24. It was a tie. Not the most exciting news there. But, hey, everybody got stakes because the winning side, offense or defense, the way that Hugh Freeze set things up, the winner was going to get stakes. And so they just decided since it was a tie, both sides get stakes. So I guess that's a win, right? Kind of? Still feels a little weird.
Yeah, anytime you get, I got a feeling they were all going to get stakes anyways. But didn't Hugh ask if they wanted to go for it I heard he asked the two coordinators, do they want to go for it at the 3 to break the tie, and they decided not to.
Yeah, I thought that was a little interesting. Maybe they were just like, hey, both sides, offense and defense, have done well. Let's finish it out where both sides win. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, and I don't know either. They, it probably more is of, hey, let's just act like we all kind of accomplished something. But I bet they also hold their breath at every play in spring to avoid injury, and they're probably like, let's don't do it. Let's don't do a pointless play in the rain.
Right. And there may have been something with that too. I mean, I'm sure there were people that, tweaked some things just because it's wet, it's out there. Thankfully, no major injuries. But I mean, let's kind of come back to the topic of the 8A format. What was kind of your thoughts on this? Because I've never seen this done. When Hugh Freeze a few weeks back mentioned, hey, what's your ideal, format for a game like 8A? And this is what it was. What was kind of the way that it came out and what you saw in 8A? Did it live up to what you expected? Did you want some more? What was kind of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, for the starting down 24-0, I kind of like that. That kind of sets that mentality of, you're not out of the game. So I was pretty cool with that. I mean, overall, they were really kind of limited with the weather. I mean, from a play call standpoint. So you didn't see much. You really saw a lot of what the last 4 games of last year, right? It was read option and, just run. So very basic, very vanilla. But the reality is, man, these are for the fans, right? I mean, how many guys have gone in there and, showed out during A-Day, and you're like, oh, this guy's going to be awesome. And then you never hear from them again.
I mean, I remember a few years back thinking, oh, wow, that wide receiver who caught 3 passes in A-Day, he's going to be our future Seth Williams or whoever, and turns out to be maybe catches a handful of catches throughout the season. You're like, okay, well, that amounted to a lot of nothing. And so, to me, I always try to come in with the expectation, especially with 8A, of this is not necessarily our best performance, because also for this staff, this is their first time to really show the world, besides reporters, what do they have? And if I'm them, I'm holding all my cards as close to the vest as possible and not showing things from 8A that others could look at and be like, oh, wow, we need to start preparing for this, because that is going to be a really good aspect of Auburn's offense, for example. So I don't blame it just being kind of vanilla. Though I do think just because of the weather, being Masters weekend and being Easter weekend, there were just a lot of things not going our way, especially for a first-year coach. There should usually be some excitement around an 8A like this. And I think Auburn reported out that there were 16,000 fans. I was there, not 16,000 fans, probably closer to 5,000 or 6,000. And that's okay. I mean, for a rainy day like that, I mean, we're out there trying to just, I guess, root on the players as much as we can, but it's kind of hard to when it's just such a yucky weather. So, Jared, what are your kind of thoughts on the overall play by offense during this 8A? Any players kind of stand out to you when you watched it?
I mean, really, I mean, well, yeah. Is it Sean Jackson? Who's the
Yeah, running
yeah,
back.
yeah. I mean, they all did well, right? But to me, he kind of looked second best. I mean, well, he looked best because Jarquez only had like 2 carries, which I'm totally okay with.
Right.
Put him in bubble wrap till September, but we don't need him getting hurt. But yeah, I feel like Sean Jackson probably, from an offensive standpoint, showed the most. Now they all did well. They all looked like they were in slow motion though because of the rain. Like
Right.
like Damari Alston would cut it outside, and then it was almost like slow motion getting to the second level and almost tripping over himself a couple of runs, and it's got to be because of the turf.
Right. And it was, I mean, I saw even in practice some of the guys slipping when they were trying to make cuts. So I'm sure that it definitely made them slow down a lot. And I mean, I feel like that also probably affected a lot of the wide receivers. We didn't necessarily see, any super, besides the one pass from Robbie, there weren't a whole lot of big flashy passes out there. So, that's kind of the just what the hand that they were dealt. Now, I will say this: Hugh Freeze mentioned that if it was going to be a nice day, they were going to air out the ball. So they had intentions on airing out the ball, but they didn't because of the weather. And again, they just said, hey, we're going to run the ball, a ton of times. And the thing that I saw that impressed me the most was we were able to run the ball and run the ball well. We rushed 280 yards, had a couple of rushing touchdowns, and for once in it seems like forever, our offensive line got some great push, open up holes, and I'm trying to again process what I saw on A-Day from my eyes, but also hearing about what's happening in the closed door practices or in the media opportunities that they've gotten. And one thing that kept coming up was the offensive line has chemistry. They're working together. They're opening up holes. And guess what? We got to see that. And that to me is exciting. I mean, I think Hugh Freeze mentioned he's cautiously optimistic about this offensive line. And I am too. I mean, there is lots of potential behind this offensive line, especially if you think about, the guys you had mentioned, some of the running backs like Sean Jackson or Damari Alston or Jarquez Hunter or Brian Battie. Like we have a lot of great running backs, and we've even got one that's coming in I guess in the summertime, sometime June, July, sometime in that time frame. So our running backs will be good, and I just hope our offensive line continues to have that high level of performance. And if so, man, I think the sky's the limit with these running backs because they can run. They can do things and we just have a lot of depth there. So I think that's a real big positive that I gained from this A-Day. Any other players that kind of stood out to you? Let's kind of maybe focus in on either wide receivers or quarterbacks. Any of those guys stand out to you?
I mean, not really. That Mardner guy from Cincinnati is definitely a big target. I did like the attempt to Landon King in the end zone, and I think it was actually a good throw by, I don't remember who threw it to him. Landon just missed it, but that big body, it was kind of a fade route. I like that play call. Quarterback wise, I mean, Robbie definitely had that one seam pass to Dawson down the middle.
Yeah.
But he missed a few. The receivers were dropping left and right. I'm still waiting to see Holden, right? Because and people talk about, well, Holden got in there last year. I see that all over, and he didn't do much. I'm like, he got in when Robbie was hurt for a series, and our offensive line couldn't block for anything. So like, people were trying to hold like 4 snaps last year against Holden. So I've yet to see him in semi-competitive play where like there's decent odds of success. Because I keep hearing that he's, super accurate. I mean, Tank and who was our tight end from last year that just went pro? Or
Schenker?
Yeah, Shanker. I mean, they chose him as their quarterback, right, for pro day.
Yeah.
And I mean, at the end of the day, it's just throwing the ball around. Like Hugh Freeze said, you should be good in that setting. But if you're not good in that setting, then you're not good.
Right.
And he was good. And I think Tank even said that he's the most accurate quarterback he's been around. So,
Yeah,
and that's what you keep hearing about him. I want to see it, and we couldn't see it because it was too wet.
exactly. Yeah, I keep hearing Holden Geriner's so accurate, and I just haven't necessarily seen it, but we've also seen very limited snaps. I mean, even today or on Saturday, the amount of snaps that were called for Holden to pass the ball, not many, not many at all. And that was just kind of like an overall theme, and that was by choice from the coaches. I think I think of all the quarterbacks, I mean, I think it's pretty unanimous. Robbie was probably the best of them all, and he came out first, and he drove down the field, first drive, scored a touchdown. I mean, it kind of reminded you a little bit of last year because he's electric. He can make plays. His accuracy is obviously still not there, but he can make plays, and I think that aspect of it. I mean, even Hugh Freeze said he's a really fun player to coach. And, that's very true because he has so much capacity and capabilities that, even as good as TJ and Holden are being a Division I quarterback, they've got their shortcomings. And yet Robbie's still getting most of the attention when it comes to the quarterback room. And you know what? If it's today, Robbie's definitely our starter. But I do want to pose this question to you, Jared. Do you think at this point, Robbie, TJ, Holden, are any of them going to be our quarterback come September? Or is it somebody that we bring in from the transfer portal?
I don't know. A part of me wants to say I would be surprised if it's one of those that's the starter, but then I think we forget how hard it is to come in so late and win that job. I mean, Cam was just Cam, right? But I mean, he wasn't even ready until like the middle of our second game. He had not earned the starting job until later. It's just hard to come in that late and win that job. And let's be honest, if you are leaving at this point, you most likely didn't win on your current team. It doesn't mean you're not good. It doesn't mean a change of scenery. I mean, Joe Burrow did it. He came in late and won it, and it just worked out, right? But Joe Burrow and Cam Newton are not that's outliers.
Right.
So a part of me is like, yeah, I don't see these guys. I just don't think Hugh Freeze can bank his, first year on what we have right now, if I'm being honest. So I guess what I'll say is this: Hugh is going to do everything he possibly can to have another option. And if he doesn't get that, I think he goes with Robbie.
Yeah, that's my gut feeling too. I mean, he's been asked, what does he think about bringing in another transfer quarterback? I mean, that is the world that we live in now, that you could bring in somebody else. Now, there are some caveats. There are some little asterisks next to it. And one of those is it can't be from the SEC. And that's just an SEC rule that we can't bring in an SEC transfer and then be immediately eligible for the next season. So if we go after a quarterback, it's got to be outside of the SEC. And like you mentioned, potentially a guy who's, got beat out in the spring and doesn't like where they're at. So, from a high level quarterback situation, I mean, sure, can you go find somebody and then be a good quarterback in your system? Absolutely. I just think my kind of maybe conservative nature of I'm like you. I think there's a lot of quarterbacks that don't get the spring, and because they don't get the spring, they don't get to play in the fall because they haven't done as many reps. The coach doesn't have as much confidence in them before September, and you're playing games against good competition. And I don't know. I just feel like I lean towards a Robbie leading this team, or maybe even Holden. Now, just based on what I've seen, and this is what you saw with TJ Finley for A-Day, TJ was playing with all of the second stringers. He didn't even get any first string reps, which I think is pretty telling. I mean, to me, that shows that potentially the coaches are kind of giving TJ a little nudge. And I definitely applaud TJ for staying on this team and playing hard. but it would not shock me if he's gone. He's given it his all. You can tell he's really wanted to get out there. I mean, that very last drive, if you watch that, where the coaches had to make the decision, do we continue this drive or just kick a field goal? And the first person out there that really wanted to score that touchdown was TJ Finley. So you can see he has that competitive fire, but even the best of competitors may not win the position. You have to be a pretty well-rounded player, especially under Hugh Freeze, to become a starting quarterback under his system. So, yeah, that's just my thoughts on that. Any kind of thoughts on TJ Finley and where he might kind of go? Do you think he transfers? If not, why wouldn't he?
Yeah, I think he probably transfers. I think that, I mean, at the end of the day, you know what TJ is, right? I think he does have enough film tape to, show you that he's got an incredible arm. He can sometimes make amazing throws, but he's not going to win you ball games very much, in my opinion, except Georgia State, and we owe a huge debt of gratitude to him for that. But yeah, I think that you start at this point. You start building, like there's stuff you can build. Like you can look at Robbie and say, okay, man, if he gets this and he's got the potential to get this, it could really take off. Or you look at Holden and they say he's just so accurate, and you can work with that, right? If you got a line that protects you, give him a little bit of time to get his feet wet and get the decision making speed up to par. You can work with that. But with TJ, he's got a great arm. He's got a great body. He's tall. There's just some, intangibles. Is that the right word? That I don't know that he has.
Yeah.
It's not a knock on him. I mean, he's a way better quarterback than I would ever be. But from a standpoint of can he lead Auburn to, the success that the other two can, I don't think so, because I think the other two just have more potential. It's untapped. We don't know any of them, but I think they got more potential.
Yeah. Well, and to me, the coaches have to determine which quarterback will lead the team to the most wins. And if I'm Hugh Freeze and Philip Montgomery, I don't know if TJ Finley is that guy. I mean, we marched TJ Finley out there pretty early last year. You started him, and you started to see that. I mean, because there was some stuff going on, but also I think Robbie did take off and started to perform really well. And you're starting to see that Robbie can, even though he's a very rough kind of unfinished product, he can improve very fast, very quickly. And I think, if you're Hugh Freeze, you're looking at that and saying, wow, he is raw, but we can mold him into what we need him to be. I mean, the whole kind of, really exciting part when Hugh Freeze was announced, we looked back and said, man, who are some of the past quarterbacks? Well, the most recent one was Malik Willis, who Auburn fans know very well. And Hugh Freeze got Malik Willis, who's pretty similar style to Robbie Ashford. And so you're just thinking, wow, Robbie could really start taking off if he kind of, if he's under Hugh Freeze and takes his coaching really well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and we don't know, right? But if you're like, okay, the potential of a Robbie at his best, the potential of Holden at his best, and then the potential of TJ at his best. I think what TJ. I think TJ's best. I think there's enough game film to know TJ's best.
Yeah.
I think at this point you got to roll the dice and say if Holden is. There's no doubt Holden is very accurate. Okay. Everybody you hear says it. Everybody that knows football, he's accurate. So what is that? What happens on game day? Well, you won't know until you put him out there.
Right.
Robbie, super athletic, can make plays. When they break down, can make things happen. Okay. Can he make the in the pocket timing route plays? We don't know. He's not been able to in the small sample size with a very terrible offensive line. So I think that, to me, Robbie's got the problem that Bo had at Auburn. Like, Bo would make the crazy play, and then he would miss, a 5-yard out route to keep a drive alive.
Yeah.
And like that's what, and it wasn't Bo. No, it obviously wasn't mostly Bo. some of it was, but it was just the fact that the timing was off because of the O-line.
Yeah.
Well, Robbie was dealing with that last year too, and so it's like, and Robbie was not. He had not been a quarterback very long. I think you got to go with Robbie. I think that like the just what he brings to the table. And listen, you may disagree. I think we're going to be super run heavy, at least in the beginning. I think we're going to try to go out there and just manhandle people with the O line. We got some great running backs. Robbie runs that read option very well. His only issue is that he fumbled too much last year, and he did not fumble. You could correct me, maybe. I don't think he fumbled in A-Day.
No, the only quarterback that fumbled, I think, was Holden.
Yeah, and it was very wet. I mean, he was even holding it in one hand on a scramble. I'm like, dude, tuck that thing away. But he didn't fumble.
Yeah.
So, if Robbie can fix the fumble issue, that cost us the LSU game. He got the blindside sack that the ball wasn't tucked away and he got fumbled and they ran it back. We were about to run away with that game and that flipped the script. And really that could have been a blessing in disguise because we didn't want Harsin to keep winning. But at the end of the day, I think that if nobody else comes in, it's going to be Robbie or Holden, and I think it's probably Robbie.
Yeah, I think so too. And I still give some percentage of who's our starter to the transfer that we might get. Now, not sure who that will be, but I still think there's an opportunity. I mean, if Harsin oh my goodness.
Watch your mouth.
If Freeze goes out there and gets a transfer quarterback, I mean, you're automatically putting him he's in the conversation. Now he's got to prove himself. And like you said, it's an uphill battle because he'll only have the fall to kind of prove himself as a quarterback. But if you get a proven quarterback that has good starting experience, then you're probably a little bit more open to the idea of somebody new leading this offense. A couple other topics that I just wanted to bring up. Let's talk about defense. One of the things, it's kind of one of those interesting topics of, you could take the run game was doing really well, but then you could also take the opposite. The flip side of the coin is the defense wasn't stopping the run nearly as much as they probably should have. What's kind of your thoughts on where the defensive line and them stopping the run and linebacker play and kind of all that? What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, it definitely wasn't great, but I don't know, man. With it being rainy and you were there, more than I do how actual much of rain it was, but it looked pretty bad. It was bad in Atlanta, so
yeah, it was bad there.
It's just so hard to get your footing and speed and push off to put pressure. Everything's thrown off, right? It is for the offense too, so they're both dealing with it. But the offense knows what play's coming, so it's a little easier to maneuver on a wet surface when you know where you're maneuvering, and the defense is having to be reactive. So I don't know. I mean, the linebacker is the biggest question right now in the defense. I know we got the transfer from Ole Miss and LSU, but neither one of them have a tremendous amount of playing time. They were just high recruits. I think that I did see Woodyard, who was the linebacker recruit that Harsin got last year away from Bama. He made a nice tackle, and I've heard good things about him. So that was promising. I think one of the linebackers last year who, seemed to not always be in the right place is getting mentioned a lot as being one of the better ones, and that scares me a little bit. I can't think of his name. But, at the end of the day, it's just so hard to tell. I think that this defense is that the guy who's the defensive coordinator, Roberts or?
Yeah, Ron Roberts.
Ron Roberts. I mean, they're known, so their whole thing is creating havoc, right? So I think there's going to be some chunk plays that are given up. Their thing is we're going to take some risk to get some turnovers. And, so I think we're probably going to live with the good and the bad. But you do need to be able to stop the run. If you can't stop the run, you're going to – what'd you say we gave up over 200 yards?
Yeah, 280 yards.
Yeah,
and that was a pretty limited scrimmage time. It's not like we were –
and they knew they were running. We weren't throwing the ball. So, yeah, it wasn't great. It wasn't great, to be honest. But – and this is why A-Day is so what does it mean, right? But maybe it means our O-line is literally that dominant and that we have good running backs and that Robbie can run the read option. You don't know what it means.
Yeah.
but you would rather it be more balanced. I mean, okay, it's not, you don't want to see a big gap there, and that's a pretty big gap to give up 200 yards.
Yep, exactly. A couple of the newcomers that I definitely want to point out on defense. We had heard a lot about Can Lee. He has really shot up, and I think as a true freshman, will be getting, if he's not getting the starting position, which I honestly think he will, but even if he's not, he's going to get very significant play time. I mean, he had a pass breakup on a TJ Finley pass, played really tight D on wide receivers. I'm really looking forward to him. He's kind of my next really big defensive back that I think is a really big up and comer. And you know, that's saying a lot considering DJ James was so good last year. That, I mean, to have another guy right in the secondary that can do a whole lot is really strong for Auburn, and just a huge testament to what our secondary is continuing. You know, we're continuing to recruit really well, get good guys, develop them in the secondary, and this is just another one of those. I think Can Lee is probably going to be a 3-year. He's done going to the NFL after his junior season and just move on. A couple other big standouts, and I mean big. We get to see a guy, Steven Wilson, who's part of our defensive line. I saw him pretty far away from where I was sitting, and I was like, that guy's really big. Sure enough, 341 pounds.
Ooh.
Big boy. But he was out there, and he looks so much more agile than I would have expected from his size. And if he gets some legit play time, goodness, watch out. A couple other guys that I definitely wanted to point out was Keldrick Falk. He is one of our new recruits. Came in, I think, in January, I'm pretty sure. Man, how exciting is it to get, you know, he's already a highly recruited guy, but I think from our perspective, where he's kind of fitting into this defense is a big need. And that's kind of rushing the quarterback, getting to the quarterback. And without, you know, Derek Hall and Eku Leota from last year, both of them are leaving to go to the NFL. We need to pick up the slack there. So I'm excited to see what he can do. One more thing about our special teams, Alex McPherson, I think he was 2 of 3, and that was with even 1 in the wet, muddy weather that it was, and he missed a 50-yarder. So not too worried about that. And even with it being a 50-yarder, he had plenty of leg. He just missed it just a little bit wide. I think that does it for kind of the different positions and players. Any other final thoughts before we get out of here, Jared?
No, I mean, you know, it was good to see some football, but hate we didn't get to see him throw it around a little more. But, you know, all in all, it was definitely good to get to see Hugh and them out there, and looking forward to getting some portal guys in here, and September will be here before we know it, man.
Yeah, it really will be. I know we got a few months of not a whole lot of sports going on, but I think with especially with kind of this portal period, I think we've got some exciting times in the next few weeks. I did want to mention that the transfer portal period, which is brand new to college sports, at least for this season, is that the transfer portal period is going to start on April 15th and run through April 30th. So they've got about 15 days to get into the portal. That doesn't mean they have to find a team in that 15 days, but that opens up the opportunity for, you know, players from Auburn to jump in there. And I fully expect that to happen. Just with kind of where our scholarships are sitting, we probably need to have some guys on scholarship get into the portal. And I expect that to happen. So just kind of prepare yourself that there will be, and I've heard anywhere from like 10 to 12 to 15 potentially that are going to transfer out. And it's not because they're not good. It's just the land of, and the world that we're in, of transfer portal and getting play time as soon as possible. A lot of these guys probably weren't recruited by Hugh Freeze, and now they have the opportunity to go to potentially a different coach that really truly wants them. That might happen. So just kind of prepare yourself for the next few days and few weeks, because it will be a little crazy, and I'm here for it. Because not only will some of these guys be leaving, but, and that's not the kind of the good story part of it, but that opens an opportunity for players that will come to Auburn and are in a we have some very big points of need, like in quarterback, probably just at least getting one, maybe two quarterbacks there, and then wide receiver, our edge / jack position. There are lots of positions that we need players. So we will see kind of what these next few weeks play out, and it's going to be exciting to see who all Auburn will get in this next transfer portal opening. Jared, before we get out of here, how can people stay in touch with you?
You can find me on Facebook under my name, Jared Davis.
And you can find me on Twitter, AJAY, JAY_. It's always great to be an Auburn Tiger. And War Eagle.
War Eagle.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on the E2C Network. On your way out, I want to remind you to stop by e2cnetwork.com. It's your one-stop shop for all our content across our podcast, YouTube channel, and much more. To stay up to date with us, make sure you're following social media accounts such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. While our content here may always be Auburn sports heavy, if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. War Eagle.